Hi, I'm Arlene Mukoko, and I'm here with photographer Dave Rossi. He is also an author of America's Towers. If you could
Yes.
talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks, Arlene. Yeah, America's Towers is a book of images I've taken of the World Trade Center over the last 30 years or so, starting in the 70s when I was very young as a child. And it really started out as a way to share my images with others. After the attacks of 9/11, people knew I had the images. I would display them around, and they asked me for copies. And one way to make it economical for people, I thought, to make a book. So it really started out to be a book of my images from the World Trade Center, which at that time there was about 50 or so images that I have taken, starting in '75, and the last actually taken just recently in 2017. So it does span quite a long time.
So here we are, speaking of the years that have gone by, the 16th anniversary.
Yeah.
It's still something that obviously hits hard with a lot of people. Talk a little bit about the towers themselves and what they represent.
Sure. Well, when they were built as a young child, I mean, they were the biggest buildings in the world. It was kind of cool, like, you know, when you're a child to have the biggest and the best. They were American, and I could see them. It was an incredible thing from my home, or slightly a few blocks behind my home, the back of the West Orange High School in West Orange, New Jersey. You can actually see them being built. And the first picture in the book actually is from West Orange High School. So I started off there and just shared all the images that I had. Weehawken, Jersey City, flying above the Hudson River, learning to fly an airplane as a co-pilot. So there's quite an array, a big selection of images there. And I compiled them into a book probably about 5 or 6 years ago called September Morning. And that book was to share the images originally. And while I was updating that book for the 15th anniversary, I came across new information. So this was kind of neat because this was almost a revelation. It's almost like the book itself was divinely inspired, if I can use that term, because I absolutely didn't start out to write a book about the World Trade Center or my images from the World Trade Center. It just happened that way. And that's where America's Towers came from. And the difference is the original book was just a picture book, and the new book has new information, which is really just come to me in the last few years while I was taking photographs for the 15th anniversary. And it was so inspiring that I had to share it, and I had to add it to the book. And now the book kind of has a little bit of divine inspiration to it.
Talk a little bit about that, and I just want to stress that this is a lot of it new information that it's been in history, but it's something that many people don't know about. So give us a little bit of a sense of what you uncovered.
Sure. Well, first of all, while taking new photographs, I happened on the Federal Building in downtown Manhattan, Federal Hall, as it was known. There's actually a correlation between the World Trade Center area and the Foundation of America, which was kind of an awesome thing to find out. Just to give you one of the stories in the book, really it starts in 1789, and what I found out was George Washington was inaugurated in New York City. Of course, he was our first president. New York City at the time was the capital of America, and he came from his farm in Virginia to New York City for his inauguration. Now, our government hadn't been complete to that point because we didn't have the executive branch complete. So with George Washington coming to New York, now our government finally was going to be complete. So George Washington arrives, and during his inauguration, he looks for a Bible to take the oath of office on and to swear in, and there was no Bible there. So he waited, he asked for a Bible, and someone, one of the officiants was a Mason, and he said, "We have one down the street at the Masonic Lodge," and George Washington also was a Mason. So he runs down the street, gets the Bible, brings it back. It was a King James version of the Bible. He puts his finger in the Bible, and he takes his oath of office. And in his inaugural speech, which is in the book also, it shows how George Washington understood that there's no way America could have come together without divine intervention. So it was divinely inspired, and if you read that, and it's for all to see, I mean, these are facts, that there was no question that he understood that to be true. And he's been known to pray in several instances. So he was a praying man, but he was a Mason also. So after he's sworn in as our first president, our government is now complete, okay? His first official duty, or his first duty, was he took the Congress, which was meeting there also because it was of course, the capital of the United States at the time, and he goes down the street past Trinity Church, which had been burnt down, so they didn't use Trinity Church, to the small chapel, and he prays for the country, and he dedicates the country to God. And not just any God, the God of the Bible. It was clear even in the Constitution and that they were endowed by our Creator. Everyone understood at that time the Creator was the God of the Bible, okay? It wasn't Vishnu or Buddha or Allah or any of the other gods. It was the God of the Bible. And that's significant because under that umbrella of Christianity on which our laws are based, so they walk down to the chapel and they pray. So I went to the chapel and I looked through the chapel, and there's a little booth set up in probably, just modeling how his was, but it's set up there. There's presidential pews there. And I open the back doors and I see the cemetery, the historic cemetery, and I look and I see the World Trade Center. Okay, it's an eerie feeling, okay? You open the back door, you see the cemetery, and that photograph's in the book, and you see the World Trade Center standing there. Okay, and now I'm understanding this is the place in America where George Washington prays and dedicates our country to God, and there is the World Trade Center standing there. So whenever you see that building that's standing behind us, that is the place in America where America was prayed for the first time as a country, because we weren't complete until he took his oath of office. And it's the place in America where America was dedicated to God. So wherever you are in the world, you see the World Trade Center, you should be thinking, dedicated to God. So it was an amazing revelation to find. That's why I believe the book is divinely inspired, because I couldn't have come up with this stuff on my own. I mean, it's just factual, and things just fell into place, and it makes you really understand that under the Christian framework, America became, that's our foundation.
It's really amazing. And you talk a little bit about Congress at the time reacting to the towers and on 9/11, and just some of the words that you heard that really made you take a pause and write down and do some research, more research.
Oh, absolutely, Arlene. It was, at that time, I'm looking at the World Trade Center, and my mind goes back to Tom Daschle, the Senate Majority Leader, the day after 9/11, 9/12, 2001, the day after 9/11, he gives the official response to the attacks of 9/11, and at the end he says a quote from the Bible. He says, "I believe these words are appropriate at a time like this. The bricks have fallen, and we will replace them with hewn stone. The sycamores have fallen, but we will replace them with cedars." Okay, we will replace them. And that verse itself, now that I'm looking at the World Trade Center and I'm remembering that verse, I had to go back and investigate on exactly what that verse was. It was Isaiah 9:10 and 9:11, believe it or not. So I go back to Isaiah 9:10, and what that is, the verse is Isaiah, the prophet. He's observing what's going on at the time. The tribe of Israel was protected by God, okay? And over time, as America has, and this is where it gets a little strange, or a little providential, I should say. During the time, a couple generations went by, and the children of the children really weren't so keen on God anymore. You know, they were going away from God. They weren't obeying His rules and His commandments, and so it would appear that God removes His hand of protection. He doesn't cause anything to happen. He just shows that my protection is over you. No tribe could hurt them. You know, they were prosperous in all they did, and they were going away from God. So God removes His hand of protection for just a moment, and an enemy that was never able to hurt them before was able to hurt them. give them a black eye. Didn't destroy the country, but give them a black eye, kind of like a 9/11. Again, that's what made me think of that. Then he put his hand of protection back on them, and they were protected. So that was the reaction. We will rebuild.
Wow.
The bricks have fallen, but we will replace them with hewn stone. The sycamores have fallen, but we will replace them with cedar. So that was what he said from the Senate floor the day after 9/11. Tom Daschle, the Senate Majority Leader, and it was an amazing thing. Now the components started to come together, and it's unfolding, and it's not, I'm really just researching the photographs for the book, and all this information is coming out.
That's really amazing. And so, I mentioned this before in talking with you that, 9/11 was a time where there was such unity. It was a tragic event, but it really did bring people together. No one was really thinking about, gender, race. It was all about pulling together for the greater good. And, sometimes that gets a little challenge. If you want to talk a little bit about that and, what happened and where we are today.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Up to 3 months afterwards, we're praying for each other. We're all together. We're one. The world is at one. It's not just America. Our allies, countries that we're not comfortable with, we're all praying to God. They were showing their support. There was a lot of love. And that seems to be what the intention was when Isaiah wrote that verse, was observing, and that seems to be what the intention, what God may have intended now. And that's what my observation was, that this may have been what the outcome was to be. Unfortunately, 3 months after that, things started to go back to normal again, which, mind you, is what happened in Israel as well. So the people of Israel used that verse, we will rebuild. We don't need God. They're saying we will rebuild, and that's what that verse was. And if you don't understand what that means, that they don't need God. We're going to rebuild ourselves. So they did rebuild. And unfortunately, after 20 or 30 years, they were just disappeared for 2,000 years. They were gone. And then, of course, they reformed. Israel actually is back together again. And if you would ask anyone before World War II, if they thought Israel would come back again, Christian churches were praying for God's will, of course, and so forth. But the Bible foretold that they would be reclaimed from the four corners of the earth. But no one actually believed that would happen. And lo and behold, after World War II, Israel was reformed from the four corners of the earth, just as was foretold in the Bible. So it's an amazing book. It's a book that's written over centuries, and no fax machines, no internet. This is a book that was absolutely divinely inspired. People were writing on sheepskin with quills and ink, and so there's no way that book could be in agreement and come from so many authors and all tell the same story. It's just, it's an amazing thing, and that's what our laws in America are based on, and that's what makes America great, I think.
That's really amazing. So do you hope, as you began to do some research, is that what you would like to see people do after looking at your book? Kind of be more connected to U.S. history?
Oh, absolutely, because, it's the old saying, if you don't understand history, if you don't learn from history, you're condemned by history. So we should understand where the country was founded. It was founded on God. It was founded on the God of the Bible specifically, and it wasn't founded on Vishnu or Buddha or Allah or any of the other gods. It was the God of the Bible. That's the God that was spoken of in the Constitution and in the Declaration of Independence. We're endowed by our Creator. There was no question who that Creator was. And the wonderful thing about that is, because it was founded on Christianity and the God of the Bible, that all the other religions were free to practice their religion freely. You're free to choose Christianity if you like. The laws come from Christianity, but you can be a Muslim, you can be Jewish, you can be whatever you like, and still you're protected because we're not to persecute anyone. Everyone prospered. And everyone hopefully would never be discriminated against, because it's the Constitution forbids that. But and these things are not known. And even the fact that the separation of church and state is not in the Constitution as the separation of church and state. It's merely saying that we should not have a national religion. You know, God is love, for God so loved the world. You know, John 3:16, as people see all over the place. So it's an amazing book, and so it almost appears that the lesson here is, you know, nowadays we're taking God out of schools, we're taking prayer out of schools, we're taking the God, you can be anything but you can't be a Christian. I mean, we're taking God out of things, and it's unnaturally persecuting Christians. You know, so it seems to be a message here that God wants to bring us back.
Bring us back to the days when the president actually dedicated this country to God.
Absolutely.
Pretty amazing.
And God blessed America.
Yeah.
And we hope that would continue, and that we would stop trying to change history. I mean, history and truth are history and truth. They need to remain as they are. And so that combined with the photographs.
Incredible information.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about the book itself. When were these photographs taken? How many are in the book?
So one of the pictures was taken in 1980 from an airplane that I was actually co-piloting. And it has just dirt in the river where the buildings were being, once they were built, the dirt was taken from the buildings and thrown into the Hudson River. And on that platform is where the World Financial Center and Battery Park City was built. So this was so new, none of that was there yet. It was just dirt, and you can see, you know, fields of dirt getting ready to build on. And that was the dirt from digging down the 90 feet to bedrock and throwing it in the river. So they actually added land to the island by doing so. There were so many different images I had over time that it was just amazing that I had those photographs. And it's almost like America's Towers wrote itself. Essentially, I didn't write it. You know, I just compiled the information that was thrown at me, and it wrote itself. It seems to be.
I really get that, by the way. I get that. That
man.
It kind of wrote itself. It sort of like spoke at you. It's really amazing.
It spoke at me.
Yeah.
It gave me the photographs. Okay, and as I'm updating it, now it gave me the final message. So it went from September Morning, picture book, to America's Towers, the foundation of America.
Wow.
And it all started right there across the river. I mean, it's 1789, George Washington, our first president, and it's right here. And I don't think the terrorists knew that when they attacked those towers, of course, but it was, I believe it was divinely inspired. I don't think God caused it. I think God removed his protection just for that moment, just to show us a small window of what could happen without God in our country. And we came back to God. Things were wonderful. It was brotherly love for 3 months. Everyone loved everyone. Every country loved us. We loved every country. We loved every person.
Right.
There was no color. There was no aristocracy. It was love your brother. People were driving around with American flags on the cars, loving and hugging. Now, 16 years later, they're taking American flags out of things. I mean, this has just gone the other way. It's almost like evil has taken over, and we need to come back to American roots and come back to the Bible.
You got down to some really fundamental, important messages about this country, you know, the freedoms that we have, the fact that Israel and the U.S. are the only nations in this world built on God and
or the God of the Bible.
God of the Bible.
Right,
so you feel that this is an opportunity for people to begin to connect and do some research on our history?
I would hope so. I hope this would be an impetus for people to find out about America, find out why we sacrificed so much, so many before us for this country that died to make America what it is today, you know, to have the freedoms that we have. It's, as I said, under the umbrella of God, not on our own power. We were always praising God, we were always praying to God, and that was the power that we had in America that others didn't have.
How can people get a copy of your book?
Okay, America's Towers, we have a website. It's americastowersbook.com, and it's available there, and later on it's going to be available on Amazon. But right now it's available on the website, but Amazon will have it. I don't know if Amazon's going to cover the hardcover, but they will have it on there. There's already another book I have on there. So it will be available to purchase on Amazon.
Perfect. thank you so much.
Thank you, Arlene.
America's Towers.
America's Towers
Available
book.
on Amazon.com
Yes.
and Barnes & Noble. Pick up your copy.
Thank you very much.
Okay.